Yes, indeed, folks, you are listening to New Please. Yes, the New Year's Blue Please with myself, Total Biscuit. And yes, I'm getting slightly merry now. Here's a question for you. How many shots of vodka do you think the Total Biscuit drank during that song in order to make it sound bearable? If you answered 13, you would be correct. I'm, of course, lying. That would be ridiculous. One does not drink Russian Standard at that speed. You're doing it wrong. You savour it, because it is delicious. It's not paint stripper. I remember using... Let's not break that glass. Bad idea. I remember using paint stripper vodka at one point. As does Basics vodka. You know what terrifies me? It terrifies me that Asda would have something called Basics vodka. Or was it, Smart Price vodka? I'm sure it's Tesco Basics, isn't it? That was it. Yeah, I got a bottle of this stuff. It's like, since when was vodka a basic form of sustenance? When was that a basic essential beyond, say, I don't know, Eastern Russia? Let's be honest here. I don't really think that goes in the basket with stuff like toilet paper and milk and bread as basic essentials. But I put it in jellies, actually. It was very good. It was delicious. And incredibly intoxicating. It also has nothing to do with World of Warcraft, so let's talk about that, shall we? I could do an entire show on my vodka jelly and the results of it. Oh dear, that was an interesting evening. Right, so, look at your group system. We talked a little bit about it last show, and I generally extolled my praise for the system. Now that I've had a couple of weeks to decide that I don't like it, that's not true. I still like it. I think it's pretty cool, but there are issues coming up with it. And indeed, the illusion of choice is going to cover some of that with your bad pug experiences. But I'd like to talk about mine a little bit and suggest some ways that the LFG system could be improved. The problem with doing things that are sensible, such as improving the LFG system to increase the standards required for certain things, is that it is met by the unwashed populistic... Is populistic even a word? Let's try populist. Let's go with that. There's a populist opinion, that is held by the vocal minority of WoW players. Very loud vocal minority. That anything whatsoever that requires the enforcement of any kind of standards is elitist. It is arrogant. You find many threads on this. I don't know if the American forums have this issue, but the Europeans certainly do. It's probably because we have a lot more bleeding hearts on the European forums than you do in America. For instance, in Europe, we don't celebrate success, and we don't hold it on a pedestal. Success is bad, because it makes everyone else look bad. If someone's like, hey, we've done really well, then the first thing that we try and do is tear them down. It's a horrendous social problem. This goes beyond World of Warcraft into basically anything. Oh, that guy's successful, tear him down. I know there's a lot of anti-intellectualism flying around the US, but it also exists in the UK and in Europe as well. It's becoming a general Western problem. Whereas, of course, in Asian countries, it's less of an issue. And indeed, sometimes the opposite. People are pushed to succeed, so they have to strive. Not in Western societies. Now, sadly, this is translated into World of Warcraft and has become something of a blight. For instance, a guild that has a stringent application process will be mocked on the forums. Now, while I made a little satirical remark in that song, unfortunately that has happened before. I'm not kidding. Obviously not with the vendor mace, but I'm sure someone has been rejected from a guild for having that level of gear. It comes down to the fact that there is a massive entitlement problem in World of Warcraft right now. And it's partially Blizzard's fault. And it's carrying over to everything, including the looking for group system. You recall that I mentioned that there was a massive thread saying that it was unfair that there were any gear restrictions whatsoever on the random LFG system. And of course, that's garbage. Honestly, it's absolute garbage. The level of gear that you actually need to get into the instances is so incredibly low. It really is. It's a joke. I mean, you can be wearing some greens and you can still get in there. You know, some craftable blues, stuff like that. A couple of BOE item level 200 epics and you're in there. Now, there's obviously a little bit of a higher restriction on the ICC instances because they're a little bit harder. Halls of Reflection specifically requires a certain level of DPS. But otherwise, it's really very easy to attain that level. But of course, that was viewed as elitist. How dare you, Blizzard, enforce what is basically gear score? How dare you? And indeed, it upset so many people that Blizzard had actually turned around and legitimized gear score. Now, I've never experienced the bad end of gear score. One thing, because I like to keep my gear relatively good for the content I'm doing. And if it's not good enough, I'll do level-appropriate content to make sure that it is. And of course, I raid and I group as part of a guild, which is what you're supposed to do. Wrath's become this expansion where pugging is apparently absolutely fine. And yeah, okay, they have put in facilities to allow easier pugging. That does not mean that that's what they want you to do. You should be able to tell that from the random LFG system. You can do the random LFG system using, yes, you guessed it, 5 guildies, and you'll still get the bonus badges. So obviously, that's an optimal way to do it, because it's faster, you get in instantly, and you're grouping with people that you know are competent and aren't going to suck. So Blizzard obviously wants that to happen. Cataclysm, yet another example. Making guilds stronger, the guild leveling system. The ability to put on a guild tax, things like that. Expanding the guild system to make it a more attractive option. Because guilds are the best way to do it. It's like the whole family values thing, you know? A nice, stable family is a great environment to raise a kid. It's true. If you have a stable organisation backing you up and a stable group of people, then you will progress further and you will achieve more. And of course, it's a great social environment. When you log on and you see the same people day in, day out, and it's like, hey, it's friends. Hang around on vent. Be nice to people. I don't have to be unpleasant to people in my guild because they're not unpleasant people. And I know they're not stupid. When interacting with people outside of my guild, it's a different story. Because they often are stupid and they often are unpleasant. Difficult to get along with. Guilds are a good thing. Now, the problem with this entitlement thing and the pushing back, this populist rebellion, as it were, that gives it a little bit more credit than it's due. Basically, it's a bunch of whining, entitled, bleeding heart casuals on the forums. I'd hardly call it a rebellion. The problem with that is that Blizzard get the impression that it would be a bad idea to restrict people any further in terms of the LFG system. However, there are a bunch of issues. The biggest problem I see right now is not the gear score thing. That's not the biggest issue. Admittedly, I would like to see it a little bit stricter, but not by much. It's okay. It's pretty solid. The problem, and this is something that you cannot have some automated checker deal with, is the fact that some people are just going to suck regardless of what gear they're in. And we shouldn't have to put up with that. I gave you the example earlier, the true story, not 2 days ago now, of the guy doing 32 DPS. He's not the only hopeless person I've seen. We had a PvP tank, for instance. He was actually bragging about his PvP score. Yeah, he was the worst tank I have ever seen. Seriously, I pulled aggro off him on the main target with 40% threat reduction, and I wasn't even trying. This guy had good gear. 226 to 232. Perfectly capable of tanking Utgard Keep Heroic. And yet I pulled aggro off him. I gave him ample time. And you know what he said? Oh, well, I like to sunder lots of things. And I looked on the main target. Like, no sunder at all. You can't be serious. Really? I mean, I DPS pretty hard. And people in my guild will attest to this. I broke the 10k barrier in Violet Hold. It was a good day. But I wasn't even trying. I mean, it wasn't even a great group for me. There were no beneficial group buffs. I mean, we had a shaman in there that was putting down melee totems. So it's not like he was helping me. I was DPSing in a normal manner with my big threat reduction and everything like that. But I managed to pull aggro on a mob? Are you serious? Pulling aggro on mobs on AoE as well when I give them 10 to 15 seconds to sort it out. And again, Arcane Explosion, not a great AoE. Big threat reduction on that as well. And of course we had the guy pull, after I think the first pull, there's like 2 packs, he pulled both of them at the same time. Died. Like, went down like a sack of bricks with 2 people healing him, I might add. My wife broke out of shadow form. She never does that in order to heal the main tank because he was going down like a sack of bricks. Useless. I don't know what the hell he was doing. And then he claimed, oh, I shield walled. I never die in this, blah, 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 blah. What's your PvP rating? Like, what does it matter? What's your PvE rating? You can't tank worth a damn. Now, of course, we can't get rid of this guy. Or we can't get rid of the 32 DPS guy. Because it's a 15 minutes before you can kick. 15 minutes. I can finish most things in that time. Yes, I can finish Utgard Keep in 15 minutes. We've done it. Under 15 minutes. We did it! With a girl group. Easy enough. We're not even decked out. You know, we're wearing some 10-man gear that's about Ulduar level. With a couple of bits of ICC and TOC. Ajul Narud, for God's sake. You can beat it in 11 minutes. We do. There are other instances that you can do that. You got stuff like Violet Hold, which is an 18-minute instance. Are you really going to kick out the guy after 15 minutes? You got 2 pulls left. What's the point? That doesn't help at all. And you're getting this guy, you're carrying around these idiots. That's the problem. You have to carry these absolute freaking fools. It's horrendous. Why should we have to put up with that, folks? Tell me. Tell me why. I can't imagine, honestly. I have no idea why we should have to put up with that kind of behavior. And yet we do. Apparently. That's equality for you. They pay their subscription. It's nonsense. What about the AFK guy? We had a tank go AFK. We couldn't get rid of him. I believe if AFK actually goes on, as in the AFK tag, you can get rid of them. But otherwise, you can't. So, we have to wait, 5-6 minutes for this AFK tag to go on before we can actually kick this useless idiot and get another one? And if we leave, of course, then we get the 15-minute debuff. And what use is Ajul Naru when you don't have a tank? Tank's sitting around for whatever reason. I need to go to the toilet. Really? Why didn't you go before that? That's what I say to my raiders. You don't get to go to the toilet in the middle of a run. There are 5-minute breaks every hour. Go to the toilet beforehand, and for God's sake, get some damn bladder control. Weaklings. I don't know why they made it so lenient, honestly. Fact of the matter is, if 4 out of 5 people say, we don't want you in the group, then who is Blizzard to say that those people are wrong? I mean, you get kicked out after 15 minutes, and then you can, instantly join another group? I don't know. I've never been kicked out of a Pug instance before. Is there some kind of debuff? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm sure someone can tell me. If you get kicked out after the 15-minute marker, do you get another 15-minute debuff? Tell me. I have no idea. Now, I'm also being told that the AFK tag doesn't even work. For God's sake. Ugh. Yeah. It's horrible. So, I think Blizzard really needs to take this by the horns and say, the choice is in the majority of the players. Yeah? That's who you should be investing the choice in. You shouldn't be investing the choice in some arbitrary, namby-pamby system that says everyone has the right, and if you get kicked out, it's so unfair. Now, you might say that voting isn't the answer. But what is? If 4 out of 5 say, you're gone, then you're gone. That's just how it is. Those people might be making a bad call, but it doesn't matter, because it's their choice. And their choice greater than your choice, because it's 4-1. Needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few and all that. And at the end of the day, it's not some civil rights issue. It's not some glorious, horrible disaster that must be changed. It's an instance group. So what if you get kicked out of an instance group? Big deal. Go join another one. And if you keep getting kicked out of an instance group, then maybe you should think that perhaps it's not 99% of the WoW community that's being antisocial and elitist. Oh. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's your fault. Maybe you are the reason that you cannot have nice things. Have you considered that before? Had to think about it, maybe? I do wonder. My name is Total Biscuit. You're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio. A slightly shorter show today, as you might have noticed. That's just the way it goes. I'm going to play you some As the Murloc. I heard some people enjoy that segment. I can't imagine why. Because I can tell you for a fact that the Murloc does not enjoy you. Well, maybe on a silver platter with an apple in your mouth. Slow roasted for maximum delicious. Enjoy.
Ask the Murloc.
Cower in fear, foolish mortals, for it is I, the Murloc, come to steal all your emblems of triumph, melt them down, and forge them into a real raid boss for you to wipe on eternally. Ha! It seems, despite all common sense, reason, and my explicit written instructions, you have come once again to the hallowed halls of my wondrous mansion. What awaits you here, the Murloc wonders, muses, ponders? Answers to your greatest questions, perhaps? Enlightenment eternal? Or perhaps, on a balance of probabilities, the very real chance that you'll end up in the Murloc's oversized stew pot. Ah, you look all shocked. Perhaps you are not aware of the Murloc's culinary prowess. No surprise that piffling mortals like you could not comprehend the Murloc's superiority. Ha! Ask your foolish, menial questions before the Murloc loses patience with you. Dear Murloc, should a combat rogue dual-weld fist weapons in raids, dungeons, and or battlegrounds? Weld? Dual-weld? The battleground is a terrible place for welding, whether single or dual. For one thing, you probably don't have the appropriate safety equipment. And do you even have a certification for it? It's a skilled trade, you insolent whelp! How dare you besmirch it! Get out of my sight! Guards, take him to the Dungeon of Pain! What do you mean the Dungeon of Pain is full? Fine! Shove him into the backup dungeon. What? That's closed for maintenance? Structural issues? Good lord! It's impossible to get good staff these days. Fine! You blundering buffoons. Throw him into the Dungeon of Minor Discomfort. I suppose we'll just have to do for now. The rest of you, I assume you have some properly spelled questions for me, The Murloc will not tolerate your flippancy. Dear Murloc, I'm having trouble getting into random heroics. They always seem to be really long queues. Do you have any tips to save me time? Ah, yes, this newfangled system of theirs, but in place for the common folk, no doubt. The Murloc never has a problem getting a group, and the Murloc is a group unto himself. Who needs tanks, healers, and DPS when a mere verbal command will cause the instance to cower in fear and give up its loot and badges for even the slightest whiff of mercy, which of course it will never get? The best way to get into a random dungeon quickly is to ensure that you are the class that is least common and most desirable. In order to do this, you should level a dual-wield Frost DPS Death Knight to level 80, kit him out entirely in blue PvP honor gear, and then watch those dungeon queues fly by. For extra badges at the end, ensure that you call everyone who complains an elitist. I suppose we have time for one more. Consider yourselves fortunate. I could be spending this time priming the landmines for those who stray off the Murloc's narrow path. Can't have the proletariat trampling the orchids, can we? No. Now, let's see. Yes. Dear Murloc, what is the best strategy for the Halls of Reflection? Well, the best strategy is to attempt to befriend the Lich King by giving him a delicious pie and inviting him to a party at your place. You see, the Lich King is the coolest cat on the block, and while he might be a little frosty to your request, all that is needed is a good icebreaker to warm him up. Try asking him about his daddy, or perhaps his ex-girlfriend Jaina. He's sure to open up at once. Don't worry if he waves Frostmourne at you, that's just an expression of endearment. Oh, and for God's sake, don't try to lick it. More than one foolish paladin got his tongue stuck on that thing. Now get out of my house, you worthless bags of flesh and bone. Flesh and bone. That would be perfect for my soup. Guards, seize them. I'm going to let them stay for dinner.
Ask the Murloc.